The mountain women and the things they do with young boys will leave you shocked. Actually, what happened was that as soon as I turned 14, a huge responsibility suddenly fell on my shoulders. I had come here to visit my father. Little did I know that the circumstances here would turn out in such a way that I wouldn't even get food to eat. During this time, I met a mountain woman who told me something that left me astonished. I started wondering what exactly she wanted to do with a 14-year-old boy in exchange for giving me so much. Out of desperation, I had to agree to her terms, and what she did next will make your jaw drop. My name is Manish. I'm from a small town in Bihar. In my family, apart from me, there's my mother, my sister, and my elder brother. My father works as a carpenter in a small mountain village near Bhutan. It is through his earnings that our household runs. However, because he lives far away from home, my elder brother has become addicted to drugs. My sister is currently studying in her intermediate classes, and I had just finished my 8th grade exams. After my exams, I had 1.5 months of vacation. In our town, most kids rarely went to school anyway. Although the break was technically for 1.5 months, I knew I wouldn't have to go back to school for at least 2 to 2.5 months. I told my mother that I wanted to spend my vacation with my father. Even though I was young, I had been taking on household responsibilities from an early age, so my mother didn't worry too much and sent me off alone on a train. My journey was pleasant. During this time, my mother had written a letter to my father informing him that I was coming to visit him. My father met me at the station, bringing various things for me because it was also my birthday that day. He hugged me warmly, showering me with love, and said, "Manish, you've turned 14 today." After that, we started heading towards my father's house in a rented jeep. A local mountain song was playing inside, and we were enjoying the journey, chatting with each other. Suddenly, we met with an accident. The jeep's driver died on the spot. Luckily, I wasn't injured badly because I was thrown out of the jeep at the first jolt and landed on soft grass. However, my father was severely injured. I had to take him to the hospital. While I was standing there, lost in thought, some of my father's friends arrived. They placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder and told me not to worry, saying my father would recover soon. However, my father's friends were also not wealthy men. They were poor laborers from Bihar who had come here to work. Then the doctor arrived, and what he told me made my heart sink. I had come to the mountains to spend my vacation, have fun, and enjoy some time with my father. I had made a lot of effort to convince my mother to gather enough money for me to travel all the way to this village in Bhutan. But now, it felt like a mountain of problems had fallen on me. Seeing my father's condition, I couldn't stop crying. He was severely injured, his entire body wrapped in bandages. The doctor said his arms and legs were fractured, and that it would take at least 3 months for him to recover. My father's friends immediately called the company where he worked, hoping they would help during this tough time. But the company owner outright refused, saying they wouldn't bear any expenses and that they had already replaced him with someone else. A few days later, when my father regained consciousness and learned about this, he broke down in tears. He was devastated because he carried the responsibility of the entire family on his shoulders. This was why he had come to work in this mountain village in Bhutan, tirelessly working day and night to provide us with a comfortable life. But now his job was gone, and he didn't know how we would manage moving forward. This thought further worsened his health. Seeing my father in such a state pained me deeply. I felt angry at myself, thinking that if I hadn't insisted on coming here, my father wouldn't have come to pick me up in that jeep, and the accident wouldn't have happened. In my mind, I blame myself for my father's condition. The hospital discharged my father after a week, and I brought him back to his small house. It was a wooden shack-like home, but my father told me that we'd now have to return to our village because he couldn't stay here in his current condition. He said, "I'm no longer capable of working, and since the company has refused to bear my expenses, there's no point in staying here. Whatever savings I have will slowly get spent if we stay here. It's better to return home." Hearing this, I became worried because I knew the situation at home. My elder brother had completely become an addict, and all the responsibilities of the house fell on my father. Seeing my father in such a condition, my mother and sister were deeply troubled. I reassured my father, telling him that once his health improved, we would think about returning home. At that time, my father wasn't even in a position to afford tickets, and I was not old enough to handle everything on my own. However, I had no intention of going back. I had decided that I would find work here and take care of my father until he recovered. The main problem was that I didn't know how to do any work, nor did I know what kind of work was available in this small hilly village that I could do. No one in the village was willing to employ a 14-year-old child because, according to the local law, employing a child of my age could result in severe punishment for the employer. I was at a complete loss about what to do. Finding work here seemed impossible for me, while my father, confined to his room, was feeling increasingly unwell. In the evening, I took my father outside to get some fresh air and brought him to a nearby garden. As he sat there watching children play, my eyes fell on a hill woman sitting some distance away. She seemed to be looking at me. After a while, one of my father's friends arrived, and they started talking. The woman motioned for me to come to her, and I went over immediately. She was beautiful, likely between 30 and 35 years old, and smiled as she asked me who I was and where I came from. She also inquired about my father's condition. I introduced myself as Manish, and in one breath told her everything about myself, including how we were struggling because we had no work. Hearing this, she smiled gently and asked how we were managing. Her question brought tears to my eyes, and I explained that my father had already lost his job and that I was exhausted from searching for work, as no one was willing to hire me. She then asked, "If you found work here, would you be willing to do it?" I was overjoyed and immediately replied, "Why not? If there's any work, I'll definitely do it." I told her that all I wanted was to find some work here so I could take care of my father for 6 months until he recovered and could return to his job, allowing us to resume our normal routine. My response seemed to make her happy, and she said, "I really like you. I've been looking for someone just like you. Someone hardworking and willing to do anything, even put their life on the line for their family." I was surprised and asked if she had work for me. She replied, "Yes, I do. In fact, it's a great job that will make you happy and pay you well. You'll enjoy it a lot, trust me." Her words made me excited, as if I had just received a long-desired toy. I told her, "All right, just tell me about the job, and I'll discuss it with my father." She said, "You'll need to come to my mansion every day, from morning till evening. I'll train you for a week, and then I'll explain the job to you. You'll even be paid for the entire week of training." She gave me the address of her mansion and added, "I'll be waiting for you. I'll be very happy if you come." She spoke with a kind and cheerful smile. When I asked her to tell me more about the work, she said, "Manish, my child, what's the rush? First, come and see for yourself." Before I could ask her anything else, my father called out to me. His face clearly showed his discomfort, and it seemed he couldn't sit any longer. I immediately took him back home. On the way, my father asked, "Who was that woman? What was she talking to you about?" I told him that she wanted me to work at her mansion, probably to help with household tasks or run errands for her. After all, what else would a woman want from a young boy? Hearing this, my father firmly refused and said, "You're only 14 years old. You're still a child. You came here to spend time with me, and I won't let you go to work. I don't even know who that hill woman is. And how can I send you to a stranger's house? Who knows how much work she'll make you do?" I explained to my father, "It's only for 6 months, Papa. Once you recover, you can rejoin your company, and I'll go back home and focus on my studies. But for now, we need to do something to cover our expenses, right? And that woman is willing to pay me well. So what's the harm in me working?" My father's eyes filled with tears as he said, "My little boy has grown up so quickly that he's now explaining things to me. I told him, "Let me visit her house once. If I don't like the work, I'll come back right away." Considering our situation, my father reluctantly agreed, saying, "If you face any problems, come back immediately." With that, we reached home. That night, I lay in bed feeling both happy and nervous. I felt lucky to have found work, especially after coming so close to giving up and returning home. However, I was also scared. I wondered how big her mansion might be and whether I'd have to clean the entire place. With these thoughts running through my mind, I eventually drifted off to sleep. The next morning, I woke up early, took care of all of Papa's chores, gave him breakfast, and left for that woman's mansion. Her mansion wasn't too far from our house, so Papa agreed to let me go there. I had assured him that if I faced any problems, I would come straight back home. Upon reaching the mansion, I told the guard that his mistress had called me. He looked me up and down and said, "You're going to stay with Madam?" His comment struck me as strange, and he kept looking at me with a peculiar gaze. Then he called a maid through the telephone and smiling said to her, "This boy is going to stay with Madame. Madame sure knows how to find the most handsome boys. You have to give her credit for that." Hearing such comments left me puzzled. Why would someone need to be handsome to do work? Shouldn't Madame be concerned about my ability to work? I thought maybe the guard was a bit crazy. The maid laughed at the guard's comment, took my hand, and led me inside the mansion. The mansion was enormous and incredibly beautiful. It seemed like nothing was missing there. It felt as though I had stepped into a golden palace. Once inside, I was seated on a luxurious sofa, and a glass of leche juice was placed before me, almost as if I were a special guest. Shortly after, Madame herself came in. Seeing her, I was taken aback. She was stunningly beautiful, like a heroine straight out of a film. She was dressed in a nightsuit with heavy makeup and sat in front of me. Even though I was quite young, I couldn't help but notice how gorgeous she was. Embarrassed, I lowered my gaze. Regardless of everything, she was my employer, and I had come here to work for her. After I finished my juice, Madame said, "You should rest in a room for a while." Her suggestion surprised me. I had come here to work, not to rest, and I wasn't so far from home that I needed rest. I immediately said, "Madam, I am perfectly fresh. Please tell me what work I should do. I will work very hard for you." Hearing this, the mountain woman smiled gracefully and replied, "You will indeed have to work honestly, as that's what you'll be paid for. But for now, go and rest. I will come to you shortly and explain your work." Just then, another maid arrived, and she took me to a very beautiful room. The room was so large and splendidly decorated that I spent a few moments just staring at it. Everything was perfectly arranged. Since I had arrived, I had been worried about Papa's health. I hadn't eaten or slept properly in days. Sitting on the comfortable bed in that room, I finally felt at ease. As I sat there, I glanced at my reflection in the mirror and realized that I was indeed very handsome. The guard had been right. I was beautiful. I resembled my mother with my fair complexion, sharp features, and blue eyes. I looked quite different from other children. Even in my village, people often talked about my striking eyes, saying things like, "This boy looks like he belongs to a rich family. How did a lotus bloom in the mud here?" A short while later, the door opened, and Madame entered, accompanied by a beautiful girl. I immediately sat up straight upon seeing them. Madame introduced me to the girl, whose name was Sunita. Madame explained, "Sunita will teach you how to sit, stand, behave, and adapt to this lifestyle. She'll also teach you a bit of the local language." I found this very strange. Why did I need to learn mountain manners just to do housework? And I already knew how to behave properly. Why was Madame assigning Sunita to me? Then Madame said, "You will spend the next week learning all of this. After that, you'll be ready to work for me. Sunita will teach you every little detail." With that, Madame left me in Sunita's care and exited the room. Sunita was indeed very kind and patient. She taught me everything, from how to sit and talk to how to present myself beautifully. However, I couldn't understand why a servant needed such extensive training. That evening, when I returned home, I found Papa deeply worried about me. As soon as he saw me, he asked, "What work did you do on your first day? Did that woman make you work too hard?" I explained to Papa that I was only taught manners and the mountain way of life. Hearing this, Papa smiled. Surprised by his reaction, I asked why he was smiling. Papa said, "Mountain people are very peculiar. Even when they keep a cat, they check its breed first. How could they hire you without teaching you their ways first? Of course, they'll train you to adapt to their mansion properly. It's a good thing. You'll learn a lot from this experience. I'm relieved to know that you don't have a heavy workload. Manish, my son, learn everything diligently and with dedication. Once I recover and return to my job, I'll bring you back home. And the skills you learn here will benefit you greatly in life. Your mother won't be able to bear your absence for long. I want to bring you home as soon as possible." Papa was right. How could my mother spend so many days without me? This routine continued daily. Every morning, I would go to Madame's mansion, where I was given the best clothes to wear, the finest food to eat, and my hair styled beautifully. I was provided with every luxury imaginable. Within 4 days, I underwent a complete transformation. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I could hardly recognize myself as the same 14-year-old Manish. The food and lifestyle at the mansion were doing wonders for my health. I was free to roam around the mansion without any restrictions. It felt as if I were Madame's own son. So far, I hadn't been asked to do any actual work. However, one thing puzzled me. I'd never seen Madame's husband. She was a married woman, as there were photos of her with her husband on the walls. Although she had no children, her husband's absence intrigued me. I once asked the maid, "Where is Madame's husband?" She only told me that their sir is always out of town for work, as he has a big business and usually comes home only at night. I noticed that the lady, a woman from the hills, would dress up and roam around the house or go out for shopping. Ever since I learned manners from Sunita, Madame would take me with her to the market, holding my hand as she shopped. She bought me things I liked, and I was amazed at my job, where I not only got paid, but also received so many gifts without doing any actual work. I told my father about my job and how I spent my day there. My father said, "Perhaps your employer doesn't have children, which is why she is treating you like her own son, but maybe she doesn't want to admit it." Madame had told me that Sunita would train me for a week before my actual work began, and I was waiting eagerly to find out what my job would be. Meanwhile, I was enjoying my new clothes and expensive gifts. My father's health had also improved, though not enough for him to go back to work. Since I had started earning, his worries had reduced. However, we hadn't told anyone in the family about my father's accident or my job yet. Whenever my father called my mother in the evenings, he always said things were fine. On the other hand, I was living a luxurious life in that woman's house and had completely changed in just 1 week. On the last day of the week, when I arrived at the mansion, the watchman laughed at me strangely and said, "Your work begins today." I was happy, thinking I would finally start working. When I entered the mansion, Sunita was nowhere to be seen. Another maid told me that I was to go directly to Madame's room. Since coming there, I had never been inside Madame's room. It was always locked. As I entered, I was stunned to see her room decorated like that of a newlywed bride. Madame held my hand, made me sit on her bed, handed me 2 bundles of cash, and said, "This is your week's salary. You will spend the entire day with me in this room, and in the coming weeks, you will continue living the way you enjoyed this past week." Her words confused me, but seeing so much money made me happy. I told her I would do whatever she asked, with complete honesty. But what she said next shocked me to my core. How was it even possible? How could I do such a thing with her? I was just a 14-year-old boy, and the desire Madame expressed was unimaginable for me. Although my young heart was melting with her beauty and the fragrance in the room, I managed to control myself and told her, I cannot do this. She replied, I gave you complete freedom for a whole week, taught you manners, and made you capable. Now you cannot refuse me at this moment. This money is for the work you were hired to do. She continued, I worked hard to make you capable, and now you're refusing me at this crucial moment. My desires will remain unfulfilled. She added, Our lives as women are strange. People envy our wealth and lifestyle, but never ask how we truly feel. My husband has developed a habit of indulging himself with other women in different cities, completely forgetting about me. He doesn't even remember that I am young and beautiful and have my own needs. His interest lies more in cheap women than in me, so I spend one day each week with young boys like you to fulfill my incomplete desires. This way, I don't have to worry about getting pregnant, nor does anyone suspect me. I know this is wrong, but if my husband can betray me, why can't I betray him? I burn in the fire of revenge and quench it at the end of the week by keeping a young boy on my bed all day. But none of them have ever been as handsome as you. My heart now belongs to you, and I want you to stay with me forever. You need money, and I need you. I'll give you all the money you need to fulfill your requirements, but in return, you must fulfill all my desires. You'll never have to leave this place or worry about your father's job. You can send him home and stay with me forever. Although I was young, I was not foolish. Her words made sense, but my mother's upbringing echoed in my mind. I handed the money back to Madame and said firmly, I don't need this immoral money. I cannot earn by walking the path of sin. Madame tried to stop me, but I didn't listen to her. Neither the sparkle of money nor her beauty or charms could hold me back, for my mother's values were far more important. She had always taught me to walk the straight path and never use wrongful means to achieve anything. I ran out of that mansion and stumbled back to my father. I told him we should leave the city because there was no purpose in staying. These people are cruel, I said. Let's go back to our country. Even if we eat just one piece of bread, we'll live with dignity. Your company fired you over a minor illness despite your years of service, and that woman lured me into her house, intending to use me to fulfill her lust. The watchman's smirking face now made sense to me. My father and I bought tickets to return home. Though I knew tough times awaited us, I felt relief, knowing I hadn't tainted my life with sin. My mother had always told me that life is in God's hands, but how we live it is in our own. I was certain that the Almighty had a plan for me. Friends, people of the past were different, but today's world is full of those who exploit others' vulnerabilities. Wealth has blinded them, leading them to stray from their morals. If you've read this story till the end, remember, you will have many opportunities to do wrong, but the choice will always be yours. As long as you stay on the right path, nothing bad will ever happen to you. If you like this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to get updates on future content.